Welcome back, everyone. Last week, New Zealand exporters started to sweat a little. Sir Nicholas Stern's report, people suggesting that exporters be made to pay for the greenhouse gases produced when they ship their goods around the world to market. But one New Zealand exporter, a winemaker, is more than a few steps ahead of all those people. When its wine hits supermarket shelves in London this Christmas, it will carry a CarboNZero label. The vineyard's changed production to minimise energy use, and it's planted trees to offset the carbon cost of shipping. Now, other businesses are being told they better start looking at carbon emissions too, and as Cliff Joyner explains, even the New Zealand Rugby Union has global warming in mind.
The scientific consensus is that we are causing global warming.
The film An Inconvenient Truth presented global warming in almost Armageddon-like proportions.
The temperature increases are taking place all over the world, and that's causing stronger storms.
While one of the world's leading economists, Sir Nicholas Stern, warned of economic oblivion if action on global warming doesn't start now.
When people do not pay for the consequences of their actions, we have market failure. This is the greatest market failure the world has seen.
Armageddon and oblivion seem a whole world away from the genteel hills of Marlborough's grape country. But on the Grove Mill vineyard, they've long accepted the sometimes obscure concepts of carbon emissions and global warming.
Show somebody a picture of the sky and say, look, you can't see the problem, you don't know how big it is, you can't measure it at home, but it's there. You've got to take somebody's word for it, and the scientists have convinced me anyway.
So convinced that they've invested tens of thousands of dollars measuring and reducing the amount of carbon dioxide emitted during the winemaking and exporting process. They've fine-tuned their winemaking to use as little energy as possible.
The building we're in, fully insulated, so we're not paying for heating or cooling unnecessarily. Over the last 3 years, our electricity usage has gone down by 1/3 per tonne of fruit processed, and that's a seriously major contribution. We've averaged down our freight component by getting more on each container. Vineyards, we're looking at using less diesel. It's obviously a major contributor.
But by far the biggest carbon nasty comes when the wine is shipped to Europe, earning those so-called food miles. To offset this, the company's bought carbon credits by buying trees in a local native forest.
It's not even enough to regenerate it, it's got to go into trust. It must be there forever. So planting a tree or planting a forest that may or may not be chopped down is not enough. You've actually got to be putting it back to stay.
Grove Mill's Saves, Gris and Noirs are now certified as CarbonZero wines. The winery's the first to get the CarbonZero tick from scientists who came up with the scheme.
I certainly think it's in the interests of every business to know what their carbon dioxide emissions are and to understand what that means to their business in terms of their running costs and in terms of their share value, their stakeholder concerns.
They've been working on a CarbonZero certification program since 2001. Now, with carbon emissions and global warming virtually a daily story, New Zealand businesses are taking notice.
In the last year, that interest has doubled to the point where we're probably getting inquiries daily. And in this last 3 months, I would say that we're actually getting inquiries all day.
Cutting carbon emissions is already a popular concept internationally. Somewhat surprisingly, the high-octane, fuel-blasting Formula One Grand Prix in Australia is carbon neutral, the gas guzzling offset by tree planting. Big sporting events here could go the same way. The New Zealand Rugby Union's confirmed to Campbell Live that it's just started looking at what it needs to do to make the 2011 Rugby World Cup an environmentally friendly one. It's so early in the process, though, that the union admits it has no idea how to go about reducing carbon emissions from a rugby tournament. But it says it accepts that the idea is a good one. The FIFA World Cup in Germany this year may show the rugby union the way. That event was carbon neutral. Environmental stadiums were built, recycling was mandatory at match venues, low-energy lighting was used, water-free urinals were built, public transport was promoted, and FIFA invested heavily in climate protection work in India and Africa. So while the rugby union has some work to do, exporters too are thinking outside the box, or in this instance, outside the case.
And one thing we're excited about is the concept going back to sailing ships, believe it or not. I'm actually determined that the first food miles free container into the UK will be our wine, I'm sure of it.
It may be that sort of mindset is needed if the planet's to avoid these sorts of predictions becoming a reality.
Our ability to live is what is at stake.
Al Gore ending that report from Cliff Joyner on CarboNZero Grove Mill. Okay.